Hey guys, I decided it was time to make an updated eye tutorial because a lot of you seem to appreciate my voiceover tutorials better than my old tutorials. So yeah, I'm going to link the reference photo that I used for this video in the description box, so you can use the same if you want to. And I will also list all of the materials in the description box, but I will also mention the materials as the video goes on. I just want to begin by saying that the frame will be better in a few seconds. Okay, so to draw the outline of the eye, I just began by drawing a circle. You can do the outline in many different ways. I know some people draw like a rectangle and do this box and all that stuff, but for this one I just made a circle to begin with. And to draw the eyelid, I slightly overlapped the circle that I just drew because usually you can't see the entire iris, at least you could not in the reference photo. And then I start drawing the bottom of the eye, so I'm kind of creating this almond shape and then I kind of measure with my fingers just to make sure that I'm getting almost the same distance on both sides of the eye. But on the inner part, I don't make it as pointed because you have this water duct. It's actually more difficult than you may think to trying to explain all of these steps, but now you're gonna make the tear duct, and it's kind of pointy, but it's like its own, it's like a mini eye, if that makes any sense. So just look at what I'm doing and follow along because I can't explain it in a good way. And then I'm drawing the waterline on the bottom of the eye, and you want to be very gentle when you draw the outline because you don't want it to be very harsh, because if you're too harsh it can look unrealistic. But in case you make it too harsh anyway, you can use one of those kneaded erasers that you just saw me using. It picks up the color really well. And now I'm doing the rest of the eyelid, and on top I'm kind of flattening it out a little bit because it's not completely rounded. Of course, it depends on the shape of the eye. We all have different eye shapes, but in this particular photo I felt like it was flattened out a bit. I'm also drawing this fold, which you can see in the reference photo that the eye has. And then I'm making a cross across the circle, and in the middle of that cross I make another circle, but tinier, and that circle will I can't talk, will represent the pupil. And then I made an even smaller circle at the top of that circle. You don't have to do it at this step, you can do it later with a white gel pen, because that tiniest circle is gonna be the reflection from the light. So it's gonna be white. That rhymes, yeah. And then I take the kneaded eraser and erase the cross that I did, and also the top of the circle because that's gonna be hidden by the eyelid. Can we just appreciate the fact that I realized that I was out of focus the entire time, but I fixed it, so it's gonna be great for the rest of the video. And yeah, now I'm doing the eyebrow, and as you could see, I kind of measured out where it was gonna end by doing this tilted thing following the bottom of the eye, if that makes any sense. And the eyebrow usually begins somewhere around the tear duct area, but again, every eyebrow they all look very different. Some are closer to the eyelids and some are further away, some are thinner, some are more straight, you know what I mean. So you know, you just have to follow the reference photo. It's difficult to explain like how to do the shape because all shapes are different. Anyways, here I'm beginning to make the shadows, and I'm using a 4B pencil. You can also use an HB if you want to. The important thing is to not use a lot of pressure. You gradually want to build up the layers. And what you're gonna do is basically you look at the reference photo and see where the shadows are, and you're going to follow that, if that makes any sense. As I say in a lot in this video, a tip is to make the reference photo black and white. You can do it on lots of different websites online, because that way it will be easier to see the shadows and stuff. And here I'm taking a 6B pencil just to make this eyelid fold more prominent so it won't fade away when I'm making the rest of the shadows. I have to make it a little bit fast forwarded because otherwise this is gonna be an hour long, and you can change the setting on YouTube to make it slower if you need to. But basically now you are going to grab a regular tissue paper. This one is used, which is actually better, but you can also use a non-used one, and you're just gonna, you know, wrap it around your finger and blend everything in circular motions. And here I'm taking an HB mechanical pencil and creating more shadows because, as I mentioned, you want to build up the layers gradually. So just doing what we did one time is not enough. You need to build up the layers. So I'm doing the exact same thing as I did previously, but just adding another layer and using a different pen. So but you can use the same pencil if you want to. And here I'm taking that HB pencil again, and I'm creating more shadows, but just in another place in the drawing, but we're still creating shadows. So again, look at the reference photo and see where there are shadows and start there and just, you know, create shadows without using too much pressure and all of that stuff. To blend smaller areas, you can use a Q-tip, which also makes the blending a little bit more precise. You know, blending with a tissue makes the edges a lot softer, but when we draw the eyes, especially, you know, this part of the eye, it can be difficult to use a tissue. I'm doing it here because I'm drawing in such a large scale, but if you're making a portrait, maybe you can't really use a tissue because it's just way too big and would kind of erase the entire eye and it wouldn't be good. So a Q-tip is great to blend smaller areas. And what I'm doing is exactly as I mentioned before. I look at the reference photo and see where the shadows are, where is everything darker, and I draw accordingly. And the areas that are lighter, I leave alone. I mostly focus on the darker shadows and draw there and just blend out the edges. And now I just go back to this part and increase the intensity of the shadow, and I'm using a 6B pencil. You can also use a blending stump. I actually have forgot what it's called in English, but I'm pretty sure it's something along those lines. But yeah, you can use it to make the blending more defined than the Q-tip, because the Q-tip creates softer edges, but sometimes you want to blend, but you just want the edges to be kind of soft but not too soft. So I use the blending stump for that. Another tip is, if you have blending tools that are already used, you can use them as pencils because they already have some residual graphite on them. So this is great when you just want to create very soft shadows, because sometimes when you add more graphite with a pencil, it's just too much, but you don't, sometimes it's difficult to know just how much pressure you need to use. So sometimes you accidentally use too much and you're like, yeah, it wasn't supposed to be that dark. So this way you can kind of control it better. And again, I'm fast forwarding a little bit because I'm doing the exact same thing as before, adding more shadows and blending, creating more layers. But in a few seconds, as in right here, you can see that I'm using the blending stump as a pencil because I want the strokes on this part of the eye to be just right. Not too harsh and not too soft. So the blending stump is excellent to achieve that. And here I'm starting to create a shadow on the eyeball, because a mistake that I see a lot of people doing is that they leave the entire eyeball white, so it looks completely flat. But the eyeball has the word ball in it, so it needs some shadows and definition. So I'm using the blending stump to create the shadow, but if you don't have any blending stump, I'm sure most of you guys have Q-tips, so you can use a used Q-tip. And when I say used, I don't mean with earwax or makeup on it, I mean with graphite on it. But I'm pretty sure you figured that out on your own, at least I hope so. And if you feel like you added too much of the shadows, you can just use the Kneaded eraser and pick some color up to make it lighter. And here I am beginning to shade the tear duct area, but again, it's the same principle. You add color and you blend, and then you add some more color and you blend some more. There's not much for me to explain, so yeah, I'm just leaving it there. When you draw the pupil, you can either use a 6B pencil or an 8B or 9B. I'm not entirely sure what I'm using. It's either an 8B or a 9B. It's not that important. But for the pupil, since it's going to be pretty much pitch black, I mean, it depends a little bit on the reference photo, but in this photo, it's pretty black. So you can use more pressure. I would still recommend you to use just a little bit pressure in the beginning though, and then add it up. I know I'm not doing that, but if you don't know what you're doing, I always recommend you to start slow and increase the pressure later, basically. Then I grab my 6B pencil and start creating the edge of the iris, which also is usually pretty dark. I mean, it depends on the picture and the color of the eye, but yeah. And then I take the HB pencil and start creating shadows within the iris. And then I blend that with the Q-tip. I really recommend you to use the Q-tip for this and not the blending stump, because you want that soft shadow here. And then I grab that 6B pencil again and I intensify the shadows. And then you want to start creating small strokes inwards towards the middle of the iris. And you want to, again, be very light. Do not put a lot of pressure. It may look like I'm doing it. I am doing it right by the edge here because it's very dark. But when you're going to draw longer lines more towards the inner part of the iris, you really need to be gentle. Do not put a lot of pressure because you don't want to have harsh lines. You want them to be very soft and thin and all of that stuff. And then I grab the blending stump and blend it out a little bit. You can use the Q-tip as well, but if you have a blending stump, I recommend you to use it because you really don't want to blend it out too much. You just want to make the strokes slightly softer, absolutely not too much. So also don't put a lot of pressure. And again, I'm also using the blending stump as a pencil here because I want really soft strokes, not too intense and all of that stuff. Here I'm actually making it a little bit dark because it is dark there, but I'm still using the blending stump because I just don't want it to be too harsh. I want it to be dark, but not too harsh. And I'm also using the blending stump as a pencil here, creating more strokes. This can be difficult to do with a Q-tip because I think the Q-tip will be a little bit too soft. You can, of course, use a pencil as well. Just make sure to not use a lot of pressure and all of that stuff because you don't want it to be too harsh. I know I say harsh a lot, but really, you don't want to be too harsh. But the blending stump is perfect for this, so if you have one, please use it. Then I grab my 0.3 mechanical pencil. If you don't have that pencil, you can use a 0.5 or 0.7, but 0.3 obviously makes very, very thin lines and it's great. I would highly recommend you to get one because it allows you to draw great details and stuff like that. But 0.5 is also really good. 0.7 may be a little bit too much, but if you're just practicing, 0.7 is fine. And even if you're not practicing, it could still be good. It could still work. So I'm basically just intensifying some of the strokes and again, not using a lot of pressure. And then I take the 6B pencil and intensify some of those strokes just a little bit where I feel like it needs to be a little bit darker, but make sure that the pencil is sharpened when you make these type of strokes because you don't want them to be, well, basically you just want them to be very thin and delicate. Then I just grabbed the pencil that I used for the pupil and intensified it a little bit more because when you draw and something, the pupil for instance, and then you draw the iris, and once you've drawn the iris you realize that the pupil is not dark enough, so you can just go ahead and adjust it. And the same thing goes for anything that you draw. Like you draw one area and then you go on to the next, and then you realize that the area you previously drew needs some adjustments, and that's okay. Like you don't need to be perfect on the first try. Another detail I noticed on pictures and stuff is that there is a slight shadow around the iris, so I'm just creating this very soft shadow with the Q-tip, not adding any more graphite with a pencil. I'm just using the graphite that is already on the Q-tip. And in the reference photo there were some reflections from the eyelashes in the white dot where the light hits the eye, so I used my 0.3 pencil and drew those eyelashes because again, this pencil is great at drawing small details. And then I continue creating more shadows, blending all around the eye where I feel like it needs to. And then I take my kneaded eraser and I shape it so it's very pointed, and I create some highlights. I don't know, this didn't do a lot, but you can do this if you want to. It's not a crucial step, but you can do it if you want some more definition. And you can also take the blending stump and add some more texture and dimension. And then I grab my white gel pen to clean up a little bit in this area because I accidentally got some graphite there. I also use the gel pen to add some highlights to other parts of the eye to give it more life and stuff. To draw the eyelashes, I use a sharp 6B pencil and I'm creating kind of a C shape, and I'm drawing outwards from the eye. It's difficult to explain like how I'm doing it, but I'm pretty sure you can see and do the same thing. And I'm releasing the pressure a bit when I am at the edge of the eyelash. I'm kind of lifting the pencil at the end of the eyelash, and in the beginning in this video I kind of made the eyelashes a little bit too short, but I will adjust it later. So yeah, but also in this reference photo at least, not all eyelashes, or I mean in real life, not all eyelashes grow out from just one perfect line. Some grow out maybe one tiny bit further up from the other, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not good at explaining, but I'm sure you can tell how I'm drawing them, so just do your best. I actually struggled a little bit just for this drawing. For some reason the eyelashes in my drawing turn out like the shape was just not too good, but it turned out better. I fixed it. I tried my best to fix it at least. I also grabbed my HB pencil and add some more shadows. I'm not gonna blend this out though because that would ruin the eyelashes, but yeah, there was, in the reference photo, she had kind of a darker shadow along the lash line. You don't need to follow the reference photo to a T, but yeah, I am also using the 0.3 pencil because I don't know, I think it's nice to draw eyelashes with, because again, it's great at drawing smaller details, and it's also kind of nice and gives a realistic impression on the eyelashes if you have some thicker ones and some thinner ones. Then I do the same thing on the bottom lash line, but you want the eyelashes to be more sparse here, and you don't want to draw as many eyelashes. They also need to be like further apart from each other. They also don't have to go in the same direction. As you can see here, I'm drawing some of the eyelashes across another one. Once I'm done with that, I add some more details with my white gel pen to again give more life to the eye. To draw the eyebrow, I first create a foundation with the HB pencil, which I'm going to blend out later on. And then I start to create hair strokes with the 0.3 pencil. You can use another pencil if you want to. I kind of mixed the pencils. I used the 0.3. I also used the 6B, but I just made these pencil strokes all over the eyebrow. And on the outer part of the eyebrow, I made more strokes, but in another direction. I also like to blend it out very, very slightly with the tissue. I don't always do this, but sometimes I feel like it, so I do it. And when you have drawn all of your strokes, gradually adding definition and stuff like that, you can take the white gel pen and create some highlights if you want to. Obviously, it's not always necessary. I just noticed that there were some highlights in the reference photos, so I created some. And to wrap it up, I just make minor adjustments, adding more shadows, more highlights, whatever I feel like I need to, wherever I feel like I need to. And yeah, that was all for this video. I hope you found it helpful and that you enjoyed it. It was very fun to make it. So if you tried it out, please leave a comment below and tell me how you did. And don't forget to thumbs up this video and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!